The Sarah Jane Adventures Goodbye Sarah Jane Smith, the 6th story of Series 4, is written by Gareth Roberts and Clayton Hickman, and it's starring Elizabeth Sladen, Tommy Knight, Daniel Anthony, Anjali Mahindra, Alexander Armstrong and John Leeson. Originally they were going to make a sequel to Planet of the Spiders, which would be interesting, but Gary Russell couldn't make it work, so he dropped that idea, so it would be Sarah Jane's tiredness and forgetfulness. So after the asteroid falling, Sarah Jane, Ronnie and Clyde grabbed some gadgets and went where it crashed, but Meteorite was all clear and there was Ruby Wright saying she saved the world and drove off in the sports car. Sarah Jane didn't seem to be happy at all. So Ruby coincidentally arrived in the same street where Sarah Jane, Ronnie and Clyde lives, so they let themselves in Ruby's house and she tells them multiple times to get out.
You're a journalist, I might have known. Get out or I'll call the police.
You don't really want to do that.
She moves in the street because of the events like Martin Truman, Bubble Shock Factory, Jadoon driving in a police car, and Rackweed. Sarah Jane wanted to stay away from Ruby, keeping her eyes open. As Skeeter says to Sarah Jane as she's making Luke tea, she realises he's still at Oxford, so she talks to Luke through Mr. Smith and she seems to forget K9's name. Ronnie came in after saying goodbye to Luke. She suggested that Sarah Jane should go on holiday and see Luke. Mr. Smith warns the gang about Dark Horde, so Clyde is surprised that Sarah Jane is giving him a gun, so they go down to the junkyard. Sarah Jane, Ronnie and Clyde were about to get killed by Dark Horde, so Ruby came, she gave Ronnie and Clyde those white globes and teleported Dark Horde away. So Ruby introduced herself. Julie Graham played Ruby Wright, who's a Quetish that feeds off Sarah Jane Smith. Quetish are races that fed off happiness in people's lives, draining their life essence, with it kinda like Dementors in Harry Potter, which I think they're pretty cool. I'd love to see more of those races in Doctor Who. Dark Hordes are an atrocious warrior race. The ones in the story are holographic by Ruby, and so does that meteorite, so she can contact Sarah Jane. Eddie Marston voiced Mr. White, a game console that's like Mr. Smith but from Quetish Planet, and I thought he looks cool. He was named by a Clyde Langer. So the gang showed Ruby around, and I like the conversation between Mr. Smith and Mr. White. Imagine the conversation if Mr. Smith talks to Siri, Google and Alexa. After Ronnie and Clyde left, Sarah Jane has a talk with Ruby. She seems to forget the doctor's name somehow, so she later gets Mr. Smith to scan her health. And because of brain tissue deterioration, she thinks she's getting too old to save the world. She imagines Clyde and Ronnie teaming up with Ruby, leaving Sarah Jane left out, which is a heartbreaking moment. Sarah Jane gives all her stuff to Ruby, she puts her in charge and deletes her voice from Mr. Smith, but she needs to contact Luke, but Ruby wouldn't let her, and she turns to be a villain.
What's happening? What's happening is you're not in charge anymore. You gave me these, you gave me this place, and you gave me yourself. Well, what's left of you?
She placed Sarah Jane in her secret cellar where her stomach is. She reveals that it was her who made Sarah Jane ill and who she is. Ruby's planned to drain Sarah Jane and Earth. Ruby says that she's going to help the aliens and absorbing many more life essence.
And then my adventure begins. I will feast on this world.
So Ronnie and Clyde went up the attic and Ruby got Mr. White to play a fake video of Sarah Jane saying she's leaving. As they went downstairs, Clyde blames Ronnie for Sarah Jane leaving. So Ronnie storms into her house and Geeta went to see if she was alright and comfort her. Meanwhile, Clyde uses Mr. Smith, realises that he's trying to warn him about Ruby. So she teleported Clyde in spacecraft that's running out of air. And she got Mr. White to shut Mr. Smith down. Ronnie tries to phone Clyde and someone knocked, and there was Luke. Great to see him again. He's unhappy at the fact that Clyde leaves him a message. He had to quickly drove from Oxford all the way back up to Bannerman Road and Sarah Jane is missing. So they communicate with K9 on laptop to find out that Clyde is in space and Ruby is behind it all. So Ronnie goes into the attic and pretends to be siding with Ruby. She puts her phone near Mr. White so they can put Mr. Smith back online. Clyde appears in the attic so Mr. Smith holds Ruby in the containment vortex. As Ronnie and Clyde goes to rescue Sarah Jane, Ruby escapes and came in saying she'll devour them completely. So Luke arrives and tells Ruby to leave Earth, but she refuses. So he gets Mr. White to send a hologram of raining of meteorites, and Ruby couldn't handle it. The stomach shrinks and releases all energy, and Sarah Jane is alright again. No matter how old she is a strong woman. So after the meteorite stopped, Clyde gets splodged by a slime from stomach, which is gross. So Sarah Jane sends Ruby to spacecraft and flying towards the sun. So Sarah Jane puts Mr. White in the safe. Luke treats the gang for pizza and cinema, and Sarah Jane says there are amazing things up there in the universe, but they've got some very stiff competition down here on Earth. So yeah, another story I enjoyed. What did you think of this story and Sarah Jane Adventures Series 4? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks as always for watching, and see you in the next video.
Mm-hmm.